Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. So, somebody asked me to talk about reincarnation, meeting people that you've shared past lives with, which sort of opens up an entire potential can of worms. So, we'll see where we end up. I have met a few people that I've shared past lives with. So far, the ones that I've known of have not ended well. I don't know if that's a trend just for me or for. But what I remember is the first few times that I thought I knew someone from a past life, it kind of short circuited my ability to make a better informed decision because I had all this um, old feelings coming forward, and the idea that we were meant to be together was definitely prevalent at the time. There's a lot of that kind of language in different tomes and books and so forth about groups of people reincarnating together, being a member of a specific soul group, for example, um, and that the group is there to try and work something out, and that a lot of the people that you have in your life are people you've shared a life with before, like your mother might have been your brother or your father or a lover or you know something like that, and that you switch roles in order to get a more rounded view, I guess, something like that. And while that could be true, it's not necessarily a good foundation upon which to make decisions in the life that you're in. um, I don't think that there is an absolute predestiny that we are required to follow. Some people probably just go along and follow it because either they haven't gotten to the point where they're thinking for themselves, or they don't know how to think for themselves, or they haven't challenged those perceptions of the world and what their role in it is, and they just kind of move along the flow that they have and keep going. um, like my second husband, who's my daughter's father, before he and I actually ended up separating, um, I remembered a past life with him in a dream. It came to me, and it was on a pirate ship kind of thing in the Caribbean, and there were negative things going on. He felt guilty for my death, and that kind of stuff. And it seemed to clarify a few things for me as to why our relationship didn't do well, and who knows if that actually was valid. I mean, there's plenty of reasons in this life to explain why our relationship didn't do well, and that's one of the things is like, if we get kind of all caught up in potential past connections and other relationships we may have had with someone, it has a tendency to blind us to the present that we're actually living in. And that's one of the reasons why most people forget their past lives, so that they're not burdened by that kind of skewed perspective that can kind of cloud the issues of things. I remembered quite a few past lives with my father, all of which were negative, and this life was no different. Um, and he was definitely around. And there's some other members of my family that I remember having a past life with, and they remember me in a past life, but it didn't really have any impact on our current situation. My uncle, who passed recently, he did a past life regression and remembered being in Egypt and being a priest in Egypt and seeing me as a priestess. And I remembered independently my part. I didn't particularly remember him, but I definitely remembered the same life from his description, which was sort of fascinating. But what does it mean, and does it matter? I mean, in the larger scheme of things. I did want to know why I was having a hard time with my son, because I was having an excessive reaction to what's a normal situation when he would come into the bathroom when I was cleaning the bathroom, and I would get outrageously angry for no good reason. And I wanted to find some context. So in that case, remembering that life helped because it let me understand that he had put himself in a vulnerable position to me from his point of view in this life because he had abused his position over me in that other life. And, these are choices that spirits, souls, whatever, make sort of instantaneously and are drawn to being involved, or drawn to being with certain people. Ian and I were actually just talking about the subject of whether you could potentially remember useful things from a past life that might assist you. Like, he remembered some martial arts moves that he had never been trained and did not know how to do, and suddenly did them. So they were kind of surprised. It seemed likely that was where they came from. And my son, when we lived up in the Kispiox Valley, someone gave him a staff, like a fighting staff, and he knew exactly how to use it. He just started using that thing like it was nobody's business. It's just like spinning it around and doing all these moves like he'd been born to it and had been doing it his entire life, which was pretty fascinating. So I know that there's definitely the potential to access knowledge beyond our current status, but it doesn't always work. And depending on what it is, it's not necessarily always helpful. I mean, it really, it's a complicated subject. There's just no doubt about the potential implications that people can have. One of them being the feeling, especially in romantic relationships, that this was something that is meant to be or destined to be together and so forth. And really having that warmer glow kind of mask any potential red flags that might be in the present life that you need to pay attention to. So it's like, it would be nice. We were talking about remembering certain skills, like being able to remember another language, or at least being able to tap into the knowledge of another language to make it easier to learn languages. Or I really tried hard because I remembered being an herbalist in the woods somewhere in Europe, and I really wanted to not have to study herbs in this life. I thought, this would be a time saver. Like, I could just remember all these plants and how to use them and stuff, and yeah, it didn't work so well. But I was still inspired to learn herbalism and to study herbs and make a choice of what kinds of herbs I wanted to study, considering I chose to study herbs on the continent in which I now live. Would be, it wouldn't have worked for me to remember herbs in Europe. Some of them might be the same, but there's probably a lot of them that would be different, and so it's hard to know. The most important thing any of us can do when we're walking this path is to try and be in the life that we're in. And so remembering past lives, or looking for past relationships, or acknowledging past relationships can be problematic. It just really depends. Like, I have one of my really close friends she and I shared a life in Egypt that we sort of remember fairly well. It hasn't interfered, I don't think, with our relationship. So that's good because, that means we've both grown. But she was like my brother in that life, and I was her sister. And I remembered a number of things from that life, initiation ceremonies and things like that. And that was the story that I told at one point about rescuing a Ka from the past in the present, and actually had a past personality come forward in time, I guess. And I became this other person for several hours. I was still conscious of what was going on, but I rolled with it because it seemed it was the right thing to do, because I had like a task I needed to complete from the past, or while I was in the past. I had to go into the future in order to do this thing, to release the energy, the spirit of my brother in the past, so that he could finish his initiation and go back to the past and then continue his life back then. And me in the future was a part of that rescue mission, because everything sort of, that was where he was stuck. So it's sort of fascinating notion, and certainly was a very interesting experience. Fortunately, the only time that has happened to me, because completely, so like taking your personality and putting it on the back burner and letting another personality take over can be tricky and problematic if it goes wrong. I mean, the fact that I was aware enough of what was happening, and then when it was over, I was able to shift back and not have any residual effects as far as affecting me in the present and that kind of thing. But it was quite fascinating anyway, because her response to our society and everything that was going on was very unique, different, not how I feel about things at all. But she did teach me how to make a crystal machine, which I did in order to temporarily reverse a portal. More than a portal, it was more like a spinning vortex of energy, and reverse it so that it would stop temporarily, so that this other part of the brother from the past could be released and make it back into the past, because timeless and spaceless is an actual real thing. So, I mean, we recently talked about schizophrenia on the live show and mental illness in general. And the thing is that a lot of that kind of thinking, focusing on it, can lead to potential breakdowns in our mental health, not understanding where we are. My mother even had a story about that, where a friend of hers had a past life regression, and she kind of got lost for about 2 years. A different personality came forward, and hers didn't come back. So, yeah, she clearly was not a good candidate for that kind of thing, or the person who was leading the session wasn't very skilled at what they were doing. And of course, the other potential hazard for that has to do with bringing forward unresolved karmic issues, either for good or for bad, into the present life. Because when we're born with a clean slate, that's one of the things we don't necessarily have to have all this past karma that we have to like deal with and go through, unless we reacquire it or make new new demands on ourselves. But I think the main thing about people and having relationships with them has to do with that, getting lost in the stream of the past or the other place, and not being able to be grounded. One of the things that I found out and experienced pretty completely in a lot of ways was Moida, my higher self, my spiritual grandmother, whatever, we want to call her, was actually a created spirit way, way back in the past by people who lived back then, who were doing group ritual and group activities, and they created a group mind that then became an independent being. And because of my roots in that sense of having been created by a group of people, I had a really desire to be in a group of people. And, you know, um, feel I love working with people. I have loved working with people and with people's energy, and that's one of the things I did in the group. That's when I was an aura dancer. When at that point, the one that I remembered as an aura dancer, that was after Moida. So there was this residual kind of tendency to continue that process, and in that life as the aura dancer and so forth, I was again a part of a group. It wasn't completely separate. And so my focus, I believe, in this life has been the individuation, becoming a true individual, and aside from being involved in groups of people that are expecting me to show up, is kind of interesting. And yeah, so the real hazard of this, like I've said, is the idea that you're going to make decisions based upon filtered information that you're not exactly sure of, and it can influence you in what you do, where you go, who you see, how you can be manipulated by others potentially, especially, that the different desires that we have for connection, community, acceptance, and so forth. But as you can see, with all of that kind of stuff involved, the potential for getting lost in the noise and activity and all these past connections that you're not quite sure of can lead to mental instability, either the getting stuck in time and not knowing who you are, or the feeling that there's something you have to do but you don't know what it is, or I don't know, it's hard to describe. But I know that the human psyche is fragile enough in general that to open up those doors to try and make a reason for a relationship. I mean, the negative part of it is pretty obvious. Like, you were supposed to be together because you're trying to make up for something you did to someone. So they're abusing you because you abused them. Therefore, it's your own fault. And that's like a really bad, a bad way of thinking. It's not healthy in any way at all. Because even if it were true, it's not a reason to give someone else the power over you to abuse you and belittle you and control you or manipulate you, because each one of us that comes into a life have a choice that we can make to behave how we decide to behave, regardless of anything that happened in the past. Like finding out about my son and what he did to me when he was my husband in the other life. I could have thought, yeah, well, he wants me to be mean to him so that he can feel better about what he did to me, so I should be mean to him. And that doesn't make any sense, because then I would be a bad parent. And, why would I do that? Because you have to make decisions based on now and who you want to be. So regardless of the subject matter, regardless of whether it's about past lives or future lives or, magic or anything else like that, how you behave sets the tone for everything that follows. And making conscious decisions about how you're going to act is the only power that we have, really, when it comes down to it. That is your power to decide if you're going to act and then how you're going to act. You can decide what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, if you're going to say anything at all. And, these are the choices that we make that kind of forge or break relationships, and, make strong personalities that can withstand whatever life has a tendency to throw at it. And I remember I had, I actually ate a gram of hash. This guy, I'd never tried it before and I don't smoke anything. So he suggested I eat it and he gave me the whole thing and told me to eat all of it. And I did not know, so I ate it all. It was a very interesting experience, I can tell you, seeing the inside of my head and coming out of it and seeing all my fears and anxieties and whatnot of absolutely everything that exists: fear of failure, fear of success, fear of people, fear of aloneness. I mean, it doesn't matter what you mention. Somewhere in the psyche, there's a fear of and the fear of having and a fear of not having. It's like quite a morass. But in amongst all that, there was also a communication I had with this very bright spirit. It was like a light that had a voice, and it told me what it was that they wanted me to do, what I had volunteered to do when I wasn't human in this life. And when they told me what it was, I said, I don't think I can do that. And then they said, that's fine, you don't have to. So they took away the memory of what it was, so I wouldn't feel bad about not doing it, which I thought was quite nice. That was a nice move on their part. So who knows if that was real or not, but it certainly felt real at the time. And it sort of freed me up for becoming a person, an individual person in this life, instead of being on a path of fulfilling some spiritual destiny that the world or the universe or whoever wanted me to fulfill. And I think in the process, I've had a positive effect on a fair number of people, one hopes anyway. And I think it's a good thing to become an individual and to be in the moment and be in the present and be in the life that you're in, instead of trying to find reasons why the life you're in is the way it is. Work towards changing what you don't like about it and getting away from circumstances that are unhealthy for you, and allow yourself to sever relationships, regardless of how many past lives you think you may have had with someone, as not being okay in this one. I don't know that as a species we're ever going to evolve until we get to the point where we're doing that, because if we're always being influenced by a past life or past lives, or this idea that we have to do these things, that we have to find these purposes and we have to fulfill them, otherwise we're a failure. It's like these trials that we put ourselves through are mostly self-generated, and then our mind gets involved, and then we generate even more, and go down a fairly negative spiral into failure of fulfilling your purpose, or whatever. So somebody wrote in from the live show about schizophrenia, which I thought was a good point to make, which is, here's a good place to make it, because we're talking about mental stability and fragility and stuff when it comes to reincarnation and etc. That if the voices you hear are telling you to do bad things, then they're bad voices. Whether they're bad spirits or whether it's a mental illness or a combination of the two, you always need to go get help, because you don't want to, if a voice is telling you to hurt somebody or to hurt yourself, or to putting you down and telling you you're not worthy, that there's something wrong with you, is not a spirit guide or an angel or anything like that that's giving you assistance and so forth, it's bad. And whether it is, like I said, a potential negative spirit being out there or mental illness, however people want to describe that, there are ways to get better. And we're born with the brain that we have, and our brain is kind of like the interface that we use in order to interact with the life that we happen to be in and the body we happen to inhabit. And so when we come into a life, regardless of our potential karmic debts, etc., what family we're born into, we have to deal with the difficulties or the weaknesses of the body that we inhabit. And everyone's going to have something they have to deal with, generally speaking, as far as health, body wellness, etc., not just the mind. And so, if we are always looking for reasons why we're having a hard time with our body, we may not be proactive enough to find out how to deal with the issues that we have. I mean, I have the genetics of this body, and it causes certain things to happen to it. I've been dealing with off and on my entire life, and doctors don't know what they are or don't know how to treat them. And I have to figure out how I'm going to, persevere and continue on as long as I can in the body that I've got. Otherwise, I have to check out and start over. So it's not a denial thing. It's embracing the reality of where we're at. And again, I talk about that a lot because it's important. And sometimes it's just minute by minute, day by day. And there are so many things that we do that have a subtle effect that accumulates, and we don't necessarily notice it until it's gotten big enough for us to see, both positive and negative. So that's why that idea of choosing what you want to do. I've seen groups of people get together because they're all children of Ra. Someone told me once that I was a child of Ra in that particular soul group or spirit group or what have you. And people can say just about anything they want to, and that doesn't mean that they're right. You have to decide what you want to embrace and what you're going to reject. And that's important to be able to make that decision for yourself. So that's one of the reasons why we focus on that subject as often as we do, because this is about you. This is about your path. This is about what you decide, who you want to become, how you want to get there, what you want to do, but it's your choice. It's not a prescribed way of thinking that's supposed to work for everybody. And, the path is not simple because it is self-generated. There are certain roadmaps that you can read and, ideas you can get. Sharing experiences from other people can give you, some kind of a clue as to how to proceed, at least how to experimentally go forward to see if something works or not. But everybody's different. Everyone's allergies are different. Everybody's bodies are different. Body chemistry is different. Things that work on a chemical level for one person or even 10,000 people may kill another person like the first time they try it. So developing that body awareness and listening to what the body has to say to us to help keep it healthy is important too. It's like, so I guess the upshot of it all is it's definitely a balancing act. And it's an experiment. And I believe that Ian and I have known each other in the past, but we don't remember it. So that's good. We don't have any baggage when it comes to that that we have to work through, because when we met, we were both at the point where we were claiming the life we were in and being ourselves, making sure that we represented ourselves as ourselves. And Ian says this all the time, and it's so true. You cannot make a good decision if what you have is bad information. So if someone has given you bad information and you made a mistake because of it, move on. It's not your fault. If you don't have the information available to make a good decision, there's no way in hell you can make a good decision because you don't have all the information. So yeah, it's a, throw it out there. Certainly some of the experiences of some of the people, like remembering the Atlantean life, because I met this guy once and he touched the back of my chair and it was like, I was suddenly back there remembering strange things like bringing lightning down out of the sky or something of that nature. Are interesting. They're definitely interesting, but they can be too distracting and not useful. And I definitely did not have a relationship with that guy in this life. That was like a 2-minute meeting. And it's good to be open to it, like the young boy in Texas that I met who was angry with me because he remembered a past life where his parents had died in a barn fire and I was there and I hadn't saved them, and he was really angry with me. And that was interesting because it was in the now and he was really mad and he started yelling at me. And when he did that, I remembered it too. It was like, there it was. Oh, okay, I know what's going on. And I just, related to what was happening and told him I was really sorry. I had really tried hard, but the fire was too hot and I couldn't get there and there was no way I could save them. And I was very sad that I had not been able to do that. And then he forgave me and then we were friends. It's just like, wow, okay. But, these things happen when they happen. They're not things I look for. They're not things I'm trying to have happen. I'm not, going out there and saying, okay, who in town is connected to me from a past life, come over, see if we can figure this stuff out. It's just spontaneous acts and situations that arise, and then being in the moment, deal with it, move on to the next thing. Never saw this kid again after that trip to Texas. I'm sure he's quite an adult at this point. Who knows if he remembers? Anything is possible. But yeah, so yeah, I guess that's probably about it for this subject at the moment. I need more specific questions, maybe. I don't know. It's so many things in my head sometimes. I have a hard time figuring out which are the things in my head that I should spew out and share with people. But I do my best, and I'm always open for new questions. So hope you guys are having a great week, and hope you all had a wonderful full moon and blood moon and got to see it, which we didn't because the sky was cloudy. But anyway, that's the way that is. Life is the way it is. So this is Siofra Brad again, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. Blessed be.